Hi, I am Tony Russo, and this is Funeral Service Insider, the podcast. Conversations worth having about death care and end-of-life care. This week, we are speaking with Mandy Stafford, who is a funeral director who who has recently gone on board, return home, and she tells us about how and why she took that gig. She has been involved in the ecological disposition movement for quite some time. She did some work with Mueller Memorials, which we'll talk about in the show. Actually, we'll talk about most of it in the show, so I'm going to just hand it over to her in just a second. But before I do, I just want to let you know that this will be my last episode. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to let you know that I am findable if you are interested in finding me. And I hope you've enjoyed all of the stories that I had the opportunity to bring you on this podcast and on the In Case You Missed It, and even on the bonus episodes. It's been an honor and a pleasure. If you're interested in what I'm doing next, I am by Tony Russo on all things social. So I'll see you on the other side. And right now, here's Mandy. So as I came to discover, I almost did a story on you 2 years ago, but I didn't because I was talking to a different person. But you were kind of behind the scenes for a big movement that I was very excited of, and helping a gentleman get terramated. Can you talk a little bit about how you first got involved in just the green burial generally, and then terramation specifically? Greenish. I'm sorry, not literal green burial. They'll come for
definitely
me.
not. No, me too. Me too. I don't want that.
I meant very ecologically friendly development burial. How's that? We'll go with
Excellent,
that.
excellent. Form of disposition. There you
Right.
go.
Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I've been a licensed funeral director for over 15 years now. And I started being able to offer natural forms of disposition at the funeral home I was managing in Minnesota. And then randomly, I happened to be sitting at the front desk, and a gentleman in his early 50s, his name was Steve, he happened to call in. He unfortunately had just been diagnosed with a terminal illness and was given 6 months to live. And he was wanting a natural burial and had called a couple of funeral homes. And unfortunately, those funeral homes gave him a little bit of wrong information. They all said, you need a vault, you need or at least an outer burial container. We can't do this because it has to happen so quickly, excuse after excuse after excuse. And then he found the funeral home that I was working at in Terra Natural Burial. And we got to talking, and I said, well, Steve, we absolutely can make this happen. In fact, here's a list of the cemeteries you can do it at in the local area. And he kind of paused, and then he almost giggled, and he's like, well, in all honesty, what I really want is human composting, but that won't be legal prior to me needing this. And as a good funeral director, I'm terrible at saying no to a family. So instead I said, you know what, Steve, let me educate myself before I give you an answer, because I don't know enough about human composting or natural organic reduction to be able to give you an answer. And so I hung up. I contacted Katie Houston out at Return Home. I had known her for years just through NFDA conferences. And her response was, Mandy, we can help people all over the United States. We can make this happen for Steve. And she fully explained what takes place when somebody dies outside of Washington. And I was able to call Steve back. And I said, Steve, let's make this happen. We're going to go through this together because I'm learning as you're learning, but let's get you signed up. You can sign your own authorization forms. And within the week, I was sitting at his kitchen table with his wife and children and got to really get to know who he was as a person. And then in September of that year, so just a few months later, Steve passed away. And I had the honor of flying out to Washington with him and actually witness him being placed into his vessel and being able to close his vessel for this terramation process to take place. And so that's a very long answer to how did I get into this? But here I am in 2026 working remotely for that company that first gave me the education on what human composting is.
So there's tons of questions I have, and they're not going to
Yes.
be in any great order. So let's just start with, tell me what it was like to do the arrangements to be on the plane. Have you ever had to, or have you ever had the privilege of, I guess, escorting remains before? Is there something special like that other funeral directors would need to know about it if they were going to take one of their decedents to Washington?
Yeah, I mean, I've done many ship outs. I worked in downtown St. Paul, so we were close to the Mexican consulate, so we helped many a times. And so this wasn't my first ship out or ship in. I helped quite a few people come back home to Minnesota as well. But doing a ship out to Washington for terramation is a little bit different. You do all of the same paperwork. You have that or tray, or we use a combo unit because there's no casket. The biggest difference is that there is no embalming. So instead, what the airlines require, yes, you can use dry ice, but honestly, that can get a little complicated, dangerous, expensive. And so what we commonly use and what the airlines allow for is about half a dozen to a dozen of those blue gel ice packs. We
Mm.
all have them in our freezer. We throw them in a cooler or on a bump or a bruise for a kid, whatever it may be. But that's all you need. And you just tuck those blue gel ice packs, behind their neck, under their armpits, on their stomach, and in their groin. And that will keep their body cool enough for about 12 hours of transportation. And so that's honestly the biggest difference from any of the other ship outs that I had ever done, is that there was no embalming.
Well, and I also was curious about you going with
With,
him. That's not
yes.
common, or is that common?
A lot of times I've had families want to fly with their person to wherever they're going to for their funeral.
Mm,
And so you can make it happen. There's not an issue whatsoever. We just, as a funeral home, we book that cargo ticket for the decedent,
mm,
and we just let the family know right away which flight it's going to be, and they can book their ticket as well. Obviously not in cargo,
right.
but they commonly are able to get that exact same flight.
And it's not the point is it's not required. It wasn't required of
No,
you. This is
no.
something that you chose to do.
Correct. My boss, he wanted every single one of us to be able to witness this firsthand. And so each time that we had a family choose terramation, he sent a couple of us with. I just happened to get to be with Steve from the very first call until his soil came back. I got to witness every single aspect of it.
Speaking of your boss at the time, the reason that I had been attracted to this story is that you open in terror rather than make it part of, quote, part unquote, of the funeral home. And I thought that was a master stroke, because it showed that this particular company, and I don't know if we're not saying the name on purpose or not.
Nope, we can. And
All
it,
right.
it is part of, so technically, it is in Terra Natural Burial by Mueller Memorial.
Right. And
So
but
it's all encompassing. But yes, it's a whole separate entity of them.
and it shows that this is a thing for people to do.
Yeah.
And the other thing that you said that startled me a little bit was that you guys did do it multiple times. How, once you did the first one, how much more common did it become?
Honestly, it spread. I joke that we knew enough about Google Analytics and Google Mapping to understand where our families were coming from. And when we started offering natural burial and alkaline hydrolysis, our area grew from, 3 to 5 miles out to 50, 60 miles. And then when we started offering terramation, that grew to multiple states because we were the only ones that were advertising for it. And I believe that that funeral home has now done almost 10, if not more, I
Wow.
believe. And that's just within the last couple of years. Now, obviously, that's not a huge, huge number by any means. But when you aren't needing anything extra to be able to perform this form of disposition, I mean, most funeral homes have a combo unit in their basement or in storage somewhere. So it's not like you're having to purchase additional items to be able to offer this disposition. So it definitely has come out that they are kind of the main people to head to for terramation, but they aren't the only ones. There's quite a few funeral homes in Minnesota that offer terramation, obviously still needing to do that ship out to Washington. In fact, I think total across the United States, we have over 120 funeral homes that partner with us to be able to offer it. So it is definitely spreading. More and more funeral homes are realizing that this is what families are wanting.
I mean, it's also an attractant when, especially in states that can't offer it yet. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's legal in New Jersey. It's legal in New York. It's not really. I mean,
Yeah. Yep.
it's legal, but try it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and just because it's legal, so there's 14 states that have now legalized it. And I think there's 11 that have a bill in legislation, and I'm working with 3 more states to write a bill. So hopefully by the end of 2026, 28, 29 states will have legalized terramation. But just because it's legal doesn't mean that the state has fully written their state regulations regarding it. So each state gives themselves a certain amount of time to write those regulations. Like Minnesota, they passed the bill July 1st of 2024. They gave themselves until July 1st, 2025 to write regulations, so a full year. Georgia, they gave themselves about 2 months to write it. So they passed the bill in May of 25. They legalized and wrote regulations July 1st of 2025. And then we have California, who I think it's January 1st of 2027, because they
Right.
gave themselves 5 years to write regulations. So just because it's legal does not mean that regulations are written, which means we can't even think about placing a facility there until those regulations are written.
And I got a kick out of, is it New York that was just like, yeah, well, it's legal, and then we'll figure it out sometime in the future, right? They didn't.
Oh, they wrote regulations, but this is Mandy staying nice. They wrote regulations in a way that makes it very, very difficult for any facility to be built in their state and make it make sense. Is that a nice way of putting it?
That's
They're
nicer than I put it. Yes.
Yes, their regulations are very tough to work around.
I characterize it in the past as, okay, we shut up the voters. Now let's get back to business.
Yes, yes, so you could say it that way as well.
Now, can you tell me, please, the story of how not only you became a funeral director, but how you opened yourself up to this kind of alternative disposition world?
Yeah.
And because that kind of changed the arc of your career, or was the arc of your career to be, involved in alternative dispositions?
Yeah, no, definitely not. When I was a child, I wanted to be a doctor. First was going to be an emergency room doctor and then switched to an oncologist. I actually was going pre-med. That was my goal. That was my dream. And growing up in a town where truly you had to be white, German, and Catholic to be in this town, I did not know diversity. I did not know other religions. I mean, I have many stories joking on myself because I didn't know anything outside of my little bubble here. And when I was in college, one of the classes I had to take was death and dying across the cultures. And when I say my mind was blown by that course, I mean, it was insane. I never realized that there was a way of doing a funeral other than you had a visitation the evening before from like 4 to 7. The next morning, you went back to the funeral home for an hour-long visitation. You rode in procession to the church. You had mass. You went to the cemetery for burial of the casket, of course. And then you came back for a luncheon, which usually was, in my hometown, German potato salad and a brat and either that or ham and potatoes. I mean, that was every single funeral. There was no change. And so seeing that this thing, death, that everybody is going to face, everybody will come in contact with death, probably multiple times in their life before it's their own death. We see it differently. And I was astonished by this thought because even, like I say, a white German Catholic in Minnesota is going to see a funeral different than a white German Catholic in New York or in Georgia or in California. And so not only within my own race and religion do we see it different, but now I had my eyes open to different cultures, different races, different religions. And not everybody is sad when death occurs, and that's okay. Not everybody sees that you're going to heaven after death, and that's okay. And so this was eye-opening to me to the point where I dropped out of med school and I switched over to mortuary science at the University of Minnesota, which I will tell you that the national boards are difficult, but I'm guessing they aren't quite as difficult as the boards for a medical doctor.
Right.
So I'm thankful for that. But I switched over to mortuary science and I have not looked back. I love what I do. I was in very much a traditional form of a funeral home for the first, 5, 6 years of being a licensed funeral director and did everything traditional like I was supposed to. And then I was given the opportunity to be the general manager of a funeral home. And I still remember the day my boss asked me, he's like, Mandy, how do we expand who we're serving by not giving up who we are as a funeral home? And immediately I said, let's offer natural options because I had seen enough different articles and videos on different types of natural options for the funeral service. Everything from, the scattering urns that just drift off into the ocean and they're okay for it to be in the water, or the times that you can put the ashes into coral reefs, or the natural caskets that are woven bamboo. And all of it seems very different, but people were clinging to it and more articles were coming out about it. Being in the Midwest, we always joke that if you look at what the coastlines are doing, that's what's going to be for us in 5 to 10 years.
Mm.
And so I brought it up to him and he immediately said, yeah, go for it. Like, come up with a name, come up with pricing, come up with what it all means, and let's present it to the rest of staff. So that's how Interra Natural Burial came to be. And we all fell in love with it. I worked with such an amazing group of people that none of them even did a second guess at this. And they jumped right in with both feet. And I think that's what made it a hit. That's truly what made this a big thing for the funeral home, is that everybody was on board. Then, proceeding even a couple years later, in 2024, January of 2024, I bought the farm that I had grown up on, moved my parents into town. They didn't need to be taking care of a farm anymore. And that meant I needed a new job. And again, I reached out to Miss Kates-Boylston, and immediately, I'm talking within 24 hours, she had me lined up with a job interview with Return Home. And I have been working with them ever since. I started out just doing pre-need for them and having the opportunity to talk to people all over the country that are wanting terramation as their final disposition. And now that has kind of grown into a national partnerships managers where I talk to actual funeral homes who are interested in offering this and doing that education. And now it's grown even further. I just got back from Virginia on Monday. I'm traveling to different state associations doing education for states and through NFDA. So it's really, really grown. And I'm seeing the progression as funeral homes are starting to accept it. For the longest time, this was kind of looked down upon, human composting, that's scary, that's weird. What are you doing? That's not happening in my state. And then a funeral home gets a call from a family saying, hey, do you offer this? I see it's legal in our state. And all of a sudden they're having to rush to try and figure this out, kind of like I had to do. And so it's kind of become full circle. I'm able to put myself in their shoes because I was there. And so getting to do that education like Katie had done for me, I'm just passing it on to the next funeral director who's being able to offer this to that family that asked for it.
Hey folks, I want to just take a second to talk to you about Kates-Boylston's events. We do both virtual and in-person events throughout the year. You can find all of the events we have at events.kates-boylston.com. What's really cool about going to that website, that page, I guess, is that You can also see all of our past events for just the cost of your email address. So you can log on and take a look at all of the events that we've already done. We just did a great one on cremation innovations, and we do have one coming up on cemetery grounds and structures. And our catalog is available going back years and years of great information and fantastic presentations. So I can't recommend it enough. Make sure you take a look at it. Events.Kates-Boylston.com. And of course, as always, there is a link in the show notes.
Tell me for a moment about how the pre-need part of your job worked. Were you responding to, I guess, website queries? You weren't just getting out a phone book and
No,
do you want to buy funeral
honestly,
insurance? And do you want to buy funeral insurance?
Yeah, this crazy thing called terramation. Let me explain it, and then let me sell this to you. No, first of all, that's illegal. I can't do that. No, truly, we have people from all over the country. We have people, honestly, from all over the world that reach out to us asking about it. I think this week alone, I was looking at my schedule, and I think I had 28 people that had scheduled a call or a virtual meeting with me to discuss pre-need. And that is crazy. In my eyes, that is absolutely crazy. There is no other funeral home that their pre-need person is like, yeah, I have 28 calls this week. Who does that? And what's even more crazy is the fact that I'm doing full funded pre-needs for people in their 20s, 30s, 40s. That's unheard of at the average funeral home. Usually it's in your 70s, 80s, 90s when you're having to do a medical spend down because you're in a nursing home.
Right.
Whereas for me, it's common. Yesterday alone, I talked to 4 different people and they all use the word excited. I am excited to be doing this. And nobody hears that. Nobody's excited to be cremated and put in an urn on their uncle's mantle for the next 14 years until it's passed down to the next generation. Whereas the younger generations truly use the word excited. They're excited for what they are going to be offering after they pass away. So after they die, they can still create life. And that is something that they honestly use the word excited for. My average fully funded pre-need age is in the early 50s, which means I have a lot of people under the age of 50 who have fully pre-planned for terramation, meaning this is going to be coming.
Well, I think what's been exciting really over the last probably decade, but I've only been here for 4 years, so definitely over the last 4 years, is that it's not necessarily specifically the options is what I'm trying to say. It's that there are people are like, wait, you don't just have to choose what color box you go in. And that just, I think, cracks people's skulls open to the point where they're like, okay, well, what can I do? What are the possibilities? And then when you think about having a real choice at the time of your death beyond what color the box is, that is, I think it's appropriate to describe that as exciting. Like I have one last little bit of genuine autonomy.
Yeah, and we see, I always joke when I do a presentation, is that everything in our life we have more than 2 options. So why is it that once death occurs, we had only 2 options? I mean, I give the examples. Look at religions, and then within religion, you have multiple options of churches. Look at vehicles, and then you have multiple options of the brand of vehicle. Look at cheese. Holy smokes, you walk down the cheese aisle at the grocery store and you have 100 options. And yet when it comes to funerals, for the longest time, we had burial, or then we had the offshoot of natural burial, or we had cremation, or kind of the offshoot of alkaline hydrolysis. And so truly we had just those 2 main options. And that's not fair. And so this third option is finally feeling good to families. And then what they're able to do with this soil is absolutely amazing. The stories I've heard from, spread or taking about 20 pounds of the soil that's created and putting it into 100 little pouches with a tree sapling. And now he is planted as truly a forest across the United States. 100 trees came out of this person's soil. Or the family that created a berm in their front yard and planted trees on it so that dad is still protecting their land. or the farmers who say, I know soil better than any other person. Soil has brought life to my family for 5 generations. Why would I not become soil?
Mm.
It's everybody is looking into this. It's not a specific type of person because there's so many options that go along with this form of disposition. Along those lines, we always joke at Return Home that, our biggest mistake was our target audience, who we thought our target audience was, because, and being honest, we joke that we thought it was going to be our Subaru driving, Birkenstock wearing,
Right.
hippie Seattleite, that typical Seattle person. That's who is going to choose this. And we were so wrong. Oh my gosh, were we wrong? That is maybe 2% of who chooses Terramation. 2%. It is the people who, it's a lot of our outdoors people. Like I said, here in the Midwest, it's our farmers, it's our hunters. I personally have helped 2 people figure out how to scatter their soil at the bottom of their deer stand out in their woods, because that's where they found the most peace. Is anyone who's sat in a deer stand, when that sun comes up or when that sun is going down and you're sitting there, that is the best time of the days. So I can understand why people want it scattered there. Down in Louisiana, I've been talking to someone. They're interested in trying to write a bill for this and hopefully add in there that the soil could be added to their shoreline at the southern part of Louisiana because their shoreline is washing away. How cool would that be? Like, after you die, you get to help still create your state, not even just like you're helping create your state shoreline. So I just hear so many different people that are intrigued by this. And honestly, the biggest group of people are the people that say, I know 100% that I did not want a casket. Like, people, that is just very a black or white option. And they say, nope, did not want that. The only other option was cremation. Never really felt 100% about it, but I was 100% not wanting burial. So I stuck with cremation. And now they have a third option. And I would say 98% of the people who do pre-need with us are switching from a cremation to terramation. So when it comes to pre-needs, if you look at your pricing, obviously, cremation probably under $5,000, and now you're writing a policy for $8,000 to $10,000. It wasn't about the money. That's not why they were choosing this. So yeah, just it's the options. It's the people that are wanting this. It's for everyone. And I shouldn't say that. It's not for everyone, but it is for a lot of people. Kind of the same way as a casket isn't for everyone, but it is for some people. Cremation isn't for everyone, but it is for some people. But don't limit yourself as to who you think it's for, because that's what we did, and that was a huge mistake of ours.
What was your biggest surprise when you took on this new role? Did you have any big surprises?
I was very surprised at the amount of people that are backing us, the amount of people that are excited for us. Because in our profession, a lot of people I don't know how to explain it. A lot of people don't want to be around the funeral director. We're kind of that person that wears a black suit. When we eat lunches after a funeral, we kind of sit by ourselves at a table. We're always just kind of thought of as that different person. People want to be around terramation. And I'm talking not even just Return Home, all of the facilities. People are excited about funerals when it comes to this. They are pro-death. They're open to talking about it. It's just that it was almost like it was shunned in normal funeral homes. And so seeing younger people, younger generations, 50s, even 60s. I did a pre-need last evening for someone who is 62, and she's like, I finally feel like I can open up and talk about this without feeling sad. And that's huge. That was a huge surprise, that just a different form of disposition changes people's feelings about death.
Excellent. And that's
Yeah.
pretty much all I have for you, unless you have something else for me. Is there something I should have asked and didn't, or something you thought you'd get the opportunity to say, but I didn't provide it?
Um, Honestly, if you're interested, ask the questions. Ask all of the questions. I always end my presentations when I'm at different states by saying, I'm not afraid to answer the tough questions. If you still think this is gross, great. Come and talk with me. Let's discuss why that is. But don't be afraid to ask the questions. And if there's a way that I can help you answer those, reach out. Just ask the questions. Don't just sit there wishing you would have, and then you're stuck when a family walks in the door. Go ahead and ask them ahead of time.
Excellent. Well, thank you so
Yeah,
very much for your time.
absolutely. Thank you.
Funeral Service Insider, the podcast, has been a Kates-Boylston production. It was written and edited by me, Tony Russo. Subscribe, please, wherever you're listening now. You can find us on YouTube, and of course, visit kates-boylston.com, not only to find events, but to subscribe to any of our magazines. We have American Funeral Director, we have American Cemetery and Cremation, and of course, Funeral Service Insider. And once again, it's been an absolute pleasure to hang out with you. I'm easy to find if you want to find me, and that'll do me. Good luck.